Are you in? Are you in? Is your mic on mute?
Yes, give me one moment. I was just logging into my own account.
That's why. Okay.
There we
Okay.
go.
Hello.
Hello. How
Yeah,
are
it's already
you?
on. Huh?
Is that good? How are you?
Not bad. At least an hour and a half away from work. So yeah, I just got done for the day. About
Gotcha.
an hour ago. How about you?
Good. Good. Surviving. We're coming down to the end.
Of the day?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right. So just give me 2 seconds. All right, here we go. All right, guys, welcome back to another fun episode today of Pick Your Brains podcast. Today, I welcome a career coach today who also doubles as a project manager, and we're going to do a couple things today. I'm going to throw a few things into the discussion today, but one theme I think I wanted to discuss, maybe you came across it or not, is two things. On this podcast, and this is me in this case, since it's my podcast, there's personalized storytelling from the perspective of an autistic adult, but there's also themes to social and work. The other thing we're going to talk about, I don't know if you've ever come across bullying in the workplace. Yeah, I'll go into, before we start with you, I'm going to go into a little backstory. Over the weekend, are you familiar with Diary of a CEO's podcast?
Yes, I am. I'm a fan. I'm a big fan of Steven. I watch his
I
channel.
actually found out I like him a lot too because one of my social work friends forwards his podcasts to me for different ideas. The one she forwarded me over the weekend that we're going to discuss was Dr. Alok, who happened to be a American-born Indian person, but he was talking about the mental health crisis among men and boys nowadays. So there are going to be a few themes that I'm going to bring from that into here, which I think are completely relevant, especially to, since you're a career coach, job search. And that's a big one. So anyway, let's start with you. Okay. So when do you, this I didn't bring for this question onto this questionnaire, but just for the audience purposes, how do you pronounce your name?
My name is Siara. In English, spelled in Spanish, but in English is Siara.
Okay. And big question, where are you originally from? Because I think Troy's where you moved.
Nope, I moved to Latham in upstate New York, but I'm originally from New York City. I grew up in the Bronx. I worked in Midtown Manhattan. That's where I started my career at 19 at Sony, and then I went to college in Queens.
Okay, not Troy. I just interviewed somebody from Troy about 2 months ago who's about a 43 actually. 43-year-old Korean Italian woman by the name of Christina, who just happened to be a former school teacher. She's from upstate New York, like around Troy area, but she was in.
Gotcha. Are you talking about Christina Ficciani, the entrepreneur? Yeah, she used to be a principal in the city.
Ah, you know exactly who I was talking about.
Yes, because she's also a friend of mine's in the community, and we also share the same network. She's a powerhouse entrepreneur, super sweet, big heart, very ambitious, very smart, strategic woman. She also created her own framework called Soul Leadership. So I
Yeah,
am a fan of
I had
Christina.
her on. I had her on within the last 2 months, and I actually liked her a lot.
No, she's
And
awesome.
she's going
She's
to come back
amazing.
for my panel discussions. Okay, so we got that you were from New York City. So what brought you up to the Latham, Albany area originally?
Originally, I came to continue my education, and cost of living was more affordable. So I came upstate to find new work and I started a career in higher education. And then I studied at Excelsior College online while I was employed with them at the time. Then after that, I became a business analyst and moved on to go to ACO Goldman Sachs. And then I moved up 2 years later again as a PM to take on more responsibilities and hone in on my transferable skills. And then during COVID and the pandemic, I decided to start a career coaching business to bring in a second source of income and job security to myself and other job seekers during the pandemic.
So we're going to get to some of that in a little bit, but all right. This is probably the second time I've had someone who spoke about AOCO. What exactly does AOCO do under the Goldman Sachs brand?
Gotcha. ACO, which was a is a Goldman Sachs company, but now is under Goldman. They're a financial advisement firm. We help the wealthy continue to maintain and grow their wealth. We also do tax planning as well, trust, life insurance, survivor support. So we're basically a financial advising team and platform for individuals who invest.
So, in other words, we're talking about high net individuals, unfortunately, more realistically, because I'm going through a process right now, but with a company called Trans America myself. I'm doing this for a different reason. Two reasons. I used to get approached by these type of opportunities when I was back in college, and if you're I graduated in 2004. When did you officially?
Congratulations. Me, I think in 2023. And then also, I have a financial advisor as well. And believe it or not, financial advisors are really affordable nowadays. Goldman Sachs does have, the high net worth, but they also had new financial plans for people that were up and coming that would make six figures, that where corporations would have partnerships with Goldman Sachs to give them financial planning to build more wealth over time. So we did take a variety of different clients in a different income range. But I also have a financial advisor named Roberta Nunez that I used, and I always recommend all my coaching clients about what's their relationship with money, and they should always invest in a financial advisor to help them reach their financial goals.
When I was a
Money
lot
and your
younger,
career is just as important.
yeah, no, that's true. When I was early on in college, after I graduated high school in 2004, that these services were never affordable to begin with. Like they
No, they
literally,
weren't. No, they weren't. You're
you
absolutely right.
couldn't
They
get
were
a
very
broker
expensive.
account at any of these. If I wanted to buy stock back then, and this was interesting, you had to have 2,500 up front just to go to one of these broker service
No,
firms.
you are right. Yeah. I think
And that
Vanguard's lowest right
unfortunately
now is
kept many
3,000, and then
people that kept many people away from starting investing. And basically, I think probably a large reason is they saw new clients after and we're not going to call it the recession, we're going to call it the 2008 global meltdown, because
okay.
most of us older millennials like myself unfortunately didn't really get a lot of our alleged first opportunities until later on in life. I'll go into that, but basically, when I was coming out of high school in 2004, going transitioning to college, I was at WCC. So you started college in Queens, right? Were you at community college or did you start
Yes, I was
at
at LaGuardia Community College. I was at LaGuardia, which
what
is a
did you
big foreign
originally
a big foreign exchange community college. So I got a lot of diversity and experience with all type of different people, and it was an amazing experience.
Speaking
If
of
I
that,
can do it all over again, I would.
speaking of that, I came from a very affluently white community up in Katona or northern Westchester, closer to Danbury, Connecticut. And Westchester Community College in Valhalla was basically kind of the first experience of being around everybody because a lot of the students came from White Plains, Valhalla, Yonkers, Mamaroneck, New Rochelle, basically all over the southern half of Westchester. I moved down to this area in 2010. Then I moved briefly to DC for 1 year and then ended up back. But I've been down in this area ever since.
Nice.
So, okay. Let's see. We did AOCO. All right. And we Troy. Okay. All right. So what was your first experience with bullying like in the workplace, and which of your earlier jobs was it?
Well, I don't want to get sued, so I'm not going to use names,
That's fine.
company names, or people's name for confidentiality reasons and NDAs. But I would say when I was in the higher corporate arena, I realized that what was similar from what my client said, people don't leave organizations or bad jobs, they leave bad managers. So when clients are usually leaving employers, is usually because they're not happy with their supervisor or manager and don't feel valued, appreciated, or supported. So I had an incident that in my career that I've always had great managers, but for this one firm, I just had a manager who we just didn't get along. I felt that I was the only person of color on this team. I also was one of the youngest as well. I was the only one that was bilingual. And sometimes I felt that I wasn't given as much grace or support as the other team members will give each other and themselves. And I felt like asking too many questions was considered problematic, meaning that I wasn't strong in my role. I felt unwelcomed. I try to give it time because you want to build trust and credibility to build organic relationships for allies that maybe don't look like you. But I decided to leave that firm a year and a half later to work for a nonprofit instead because I didn't feel like this is where I belong.
Now, if you want to talk about the idea of belonging in that sense, think about this one for a minute because you and I have two complete differences in us, but there's similarities. I worked for the Goodwill of New York and New Jersey, and honestly, for an organization that was very pro, will help people on the autism spectrum and people on with disabilities. First off, we were clumped in into one. First off, we all get clumped in, which we shouldn't because everybody's different. That's number one.
Absolutely. And you shouldn't just put people in groups that are similar. You want to mix it up, that everyone
But
can learn from each other and their perspectives, and also learn how to build that good company each other because everyone has strengths and weaknesses that they can benefit from. And I think organizations are learning more over time that it's not about just hiring diverse talent and just throwing them together and think that that's just how it works. It takes a lot of training, strategy, commitment, unity, a lot of team building workshops to build that trust and that company culture that everyone feels welcomed and included, and whatever accommodations that can be given to make everyone's work life easier and more enjoyable for the needs of the entire teammates and the organization as a whole should be always taken into consideration.
well, that's unfortunately the problem because this particular employer looked at financially, well, if we employ people who are on the autism spectrum as well as people who are handicapped, disabled, you know, yeah, we get bodies, but then unfortunately, there's a little financial component because of the American with Disabilities Act, aka federal money. So no one wants to feel like the token write off in a sense,
No,
but
absolutely,
that's
absolutely. And
how I felt. I didn't just feel like paperwork, especially at that company. I just literally felt like my not forget my contribution at that. they didn't think I was capable of doing more. In 2019, when I just graduated from Mercy College with my associate's degree, which transferred back to WCC, and then my bachelor's
Congratulations.
degree, thank you. Unfortunately, guess what their human resource department said to me when I wanted to apply for a couple office roles? The recruiter unprofessionally said to me when trying to come off, a retail sales floor, she said, well, if your resume didn't meet certain skill areas of what you were applying for, most likely this is why it wasn't brought forward to an interview, which was kind of an early red flag that the hiring processes had changed and that I probably wasn't going to get rewarded. But still, if somebody's desire is to transition to something else within the company because they don't want to be on the front line anymore, you shouldn't be trying to keep people in a particular type of role. I just came across this today on LinkedIn. I'm not going to pull the post, but basically what it's kind of getting to is number number one. I acknowledge that probably someone like you or me still needs a 9 to 5 on some level, even though we're entrepreneurs. But this shouldn't be a reason to be holding people back or keeping them in the same role that they're doing because you don't want to lose the current experience.
No, absolutely. But Ben, I also want you to keep in mind from the career strategist standpoint, everyone is going to be entitled to their opinion. Of course, everyone brings different value, and like it's up to us to take the advice if we want it and to discard it because everybody has their own perspective. Recruiters are not experts in everything in their fields. But one thing I can say when I work with clients who are pivoting to new careers or new opportunities because they're ready to grow, their strategies I use, like looking at their transferable skills and making sure that that's highlighted to the roles that they're applying for, showing their experience of value of what they accomplished that is now a requirement for the new roles that they're applying for. So it's really hard. Like the goal is making the resume speak for you because a recruiter is only going to look at the resume no more than 2.5 seconds. And half the time, the resume is going to go through a ATS system, like an algorithm, which is going to look for keywords that it's in the job description. So the keywords that are in the job description of what the minimum requirements are, what are the skills they desire, what are the education credentials. And then what happens after that is the resume has one job, is to now impress the recruiter to call you to schedule an interview, to now be able to pitch yourself, to seal the deal, to get an offer. I tell my clients all the time, don't be discouraged. It doesn't matter how many no's you get or everyone's opinion that may not always be positive, because at the end of the day, Ben, you just need one yes. One yes. So I'm happy that you didn't take her advice to heat and that you continued your education and you continue to apply and continue to find other organizations to continue to grow your career. And I'm proud of you for that.
So I ended up, this is what happened with Goodwill. After that, what ended up happening was the manager at that time, Tim, who was not my past manager, who was a lot more tolerant and understanding, hence because I
Great.
had ended up there from 5 to 10 years. The newer manager was almost successful in attempting to chase me off starting in the new year after that interaction with the recruiter. And then as soon as COVID hit, the store closed down for up to 1 month. I'd already had a second job at the school district, and I've always told this story on LinkedIn. When they called me back 4 months later, I just said no. I just said, you know what? I was working as a personal care aide at that point, and then the school was getting ready to do callbacks in the fall. So I was just like, I'm not going to go back to Goodwill after the fact that they didn't allow me to transition to preferred office roles. The manager tried to chase me off because he didn't like me in the new year, or like not just the way I worked. He didn't like being upstaged in front of his superiors, and he docked me all the way down to 1 day. Then COVID hit, and then basically that was kind of an experience with some level of managerial bullying at an organization
Got
that's technically not supposed to necessarily do that to somebody on the spectrum because they could be held liable for that. Years later, I just learned to not give a crap because, you know, as it turned out, after I left that organization, I found out about a year later that they failed to accommodate a janitor who was also on the spectrum like me. And guess what the janitor did? He went and sued the company.
As you should. But
Yeah,
I'm proud of you,
because
Ben.
unsafe working conditions. It's stuff that I said for years of working there and how their nonprofit retail model was, which is basically hiring people just to basically keep an entire back room clean, but not provide, safe conditions, which would have been, several OSHA violations. And then overworking everyone to the point where one thing that happened this year that had re-aggravated lower back pain. I had developed it from working in a warehouse. Other part of it is also because I'm sitting down up to 9 hours a day.
I'm listening, Ben.
Yeah, and to answer your question, yes, this is going to be this is why these are recorded.
Oh, okay, okay. I just didn't want to mess up your recording and just wanted to be mindful of time and make
No,
sure
it's
that you
fine.
got all the
So,
information out of me.
yeah. So, we can end at 8 if you would like. So yeah, all
But
right,
can I
7.
say, Ben, that I'm also proud of you for also standing up for yourself and also finding a better employer because you had that confidence because you know your value and all the wonderful transferable skills and talent and expertise that you bring and that you were ready to give your time and treasure and talent to another organization that can appreciate you.
Yeah, just right now, the challenge is unfortunately the educational components because I can, right now, you know what it is? I can perform other office roles outside of customer service where I currently work or with somebody else, but I'm looking outside because it's not the pay anymore. It's just I'm dull and bored with customer service, booking
That's okay.
appointments. It's nothing personal. I like the actual company that I work for, United Healthcare. It's just dealing with the public is not enjoyable anymore.
Okay. You know what? We can work on that together offline if you like.
Yeah, no, that's probably something that I will definitely come to you for as well. Uh
Definitely.
so
I'll
in
be
an
happy to look at some
entrepreneurial,
opportunities for you.
yeah, I had another thought that you might also like. The other types of opportunities I'm also looking for, and I just did this recently. They were training up. I just trained psychotherapy clinics, uh social workers and therapists about a week or two ago. I'll show you that video offline, which
Oh,
was a
definitely. And send me your resume offline as well. Let me
yeah,
send over your resume sometime
I'll
this
do
week
that.
so I can look over. Then I can build strategy and look at your transferable skills and experience and then have some career choices and employment opportunities I can research and pitch to you that you may have interest in or may have not thought of. Because Ben, would you like to work at an organization that supports or advocates for people on the spectrum, for others and like you as well? With that, find better alignment and like build more purpose and excitement for you
For
so
this
you won't get as bored.
podcast and my eventual media company, yes, because
Okay.
I I like what I it's not that I don't like what I'm doing. It's I need to be doing more interrelated things to what I'm building. That's the problem right now. And that's what most people who've come on my show have completely also sensed like you is I'm in an awkward transition period right now where there's things I really want to be doing, which is building this into a media company, but I need roles that align with this, not where and even a great friend of mine down in Florida who's a mother last week even said it herself. Most people chase money and then forget that sometimes money isn't always worth it if you can be doing something that's more not just aligned with my goals or their goals, but something they would get more enjoyment out of. And some of my old friends don't understand that because they think everything in life revolves around money, which it always doesn't. Money
Nope, I
is
understand. It
money.
revolves around purpose too. You have to be fulfilled, see the career alignment. And I wouldn't say you're in a weird transition, Ben, because I believe we all have many different gifts and many different talents to do all type of jobs. But I totally respect and understand that as moving forward, as the future continues to play out, that you would like an opportunity that now you that has to do with media to be in alignment with the podcast and the conversations and the content you create on LinkedIn. And some suggestions I have is looking into roles of marketing, right? Because you can learn a lot too
Digital
that now
like
fits into
program
the,
like a sorry to cut off, like a program manager or digital marketing.
yeah, anything that has to do with marketing, because marketing always has to do with media, right? So then it comes into play of using the skills and talents of creating content, using social platforms, videos, photos, audio, and all of that still surrounds podcasting. So I feel like that can be pointing in the right direction as well. And you know what? We can talk offline and figure out some career choices that align better with the media company you want to build to help you reach those goals. Like
Okay.
when you think about it, being a PM and a career coach have similarities, but they're night and day. But they're both gifts I enjoy doing. Like I love to organize chaos. So this is why I like being a PM in tech. And then I love mentoring, sponsoring, and coaching high achieving individuals and women and giving back to the youth for career readiness. So this is where my coaching business comes to play that I'm fulfilling using more of my gifts using project management foundations to career coach the women I work with.
Yeah, I've the one thing I noticed with the LinkedIn platform is more of the women don't necessarily always want to work with men. They typically try to cater more to women. But I always say this
I try, but I still get a lot of men clients.
because what you have to think about is this. It goes back to what I was just saying about the episode that I was just watching. Unfortunately, right now, there's a, there's a crisis with men in their careers. And a lot of it, as I was just watching with Dr. Alok, he's talking about a lot of different things. Like, for example, I don't actually I don't actually watch porn unlike other people that I've known in the past, but I would say the frustration that I have at this point isn't just resume, it's career fulfillment. That's been the huge issue with me, especially now at approaching 40, where I wanted to be somewhere else. And then my great question to you is, let's get your opinion on something. Do you think social media is a good thing, a bad thing, or it adds toxicity to people's lives?
It's both. If you use it for the right reasons, it can make big positive impact. If you use it for the wrong reasons, then it's going to cause harm. Because like you coming back to what you said about the bullying, there's people that bully each other out of jealousy and envy and for negative intent on social media. That does affect people's outcome and confidence in how they see and value themselves for certain opportunities. I try my best to use my career coaching content that it's only positive information to be able to empower job seekers and for people to prepare
That's
for
what
career
I do with
advancement.
my content
No,
also, because
absolutely. But you already
unfortunately,
know, Ben, there's always the trolls. And I feel like everything is in moderation. And I feel like you have to have those boundaries with yourself of how much is too much social media in your life because all of us have different tolerances. My social media is to increase my personal brand. So I'm able to be strategic in spreading awareness, getting clients, and then showcasing to potential employers of all the great work that I'm doing in the community. So this is where I use social media. I use social media to also meet great people like you, Ben, and recruiters and because employment agencies because the more relationships I build to build my network, I now have more network resources to share with my clients that are coming to me to find new opportunities.
So this
But you're right, it can be a
actually,
positive thing. If you use social media for good, you can make more business, you can build a 6, 7 figure business, sell your products, your services, pitch yourself. And of course, you can use it for negative, negative content about all the terrible things that are going on to the world, or watching other individuals not share a positive opinion about certain topics. I try my best in my page. I never discuss politics. That's something that I stay out of and neutral, but I'm a big advocate of historically
I have
ignored
an
groups.
opinion for you on I do this with LinkedIn. I do share political stuff, but the stuff that I share is very rarely, and it's framed as public policy. The problem that
Okay, great.
many people have with politics is what they don't realize is politics is public policy. You have two major parties that unfortunately cater to a certain group of people, and they don't think about the other group of people. A great example: every time you see tech companies doing very large layoffs, or every time you see a career coach going on there and complaining, why aren't these tech companies paying people fair wages? Let's use our heads, because Goldman Sachs, for example, does a lot of this very frequently. I had someone on the show who was a social worker, and guess what her first occupation, which was non-clinical, was? Registered lobbyist. Most large-scale businesses go to lobbying firms to get certain laws passed. So, for example, when coaches were complaining 2 years ago on LinkedIn about salary transparency, I'm like saying to at least 2 to 3 of them, okay, so you're going into politics. You can't reframe it as we want companies to basically pay this without realizing that they keep wages at a certain level as a corporation so they can pay those lobbying groups. Why do you I'm sure you're aware of that on some level. Corporations use lobbying groups because they want certain things, passed in their favor.
I think all organizations try to find their loopholes to their competitive advantage when it comes to saving company money and trying to hire and be competitive with top talent and salary ranges. Some do well than others. There's firms that we have the habit that if usually organizations see their profits in quarters. So if once they get the quarter report and they're not doing as well as anticipated when it comes to revenue wise, the first thing to go is now looking at the employee staff of what's needed and then chopping that off first because that's usually a lot of where the money is spent. Of course, there's other strategies to use, but usually like Fortune 500 companies, if they're struggling to make profit or not meeting those profit margin expectations, usually layoffs are the first answer. This is why I always tell my clients it's so important to build a strong personal brand presence because you don't want to be in the surrender of your corporation. Now you're impacted by a layoff, but you want to have enough traction in the community and in social media to now get the attention as top talent to now get a new job as soon as possible. Like people can't give you opportunities if they don't know you exist yet. And the only way they know you exist is that you're constantly networking, building those organic relationships. You're building your personal brand so you can be seen of all the amazing things that you have done with past employers, future employers, and what you're doing in your community is going to be attractive to Fortune 500 company recruiters who are looking for talent that you have the skills for.
So
So,
I've come into conflict with my really good best friend over this because he doesn't think utilizing sites like LinkedIn has any benefit. He
oh
thinks
no, it has so
everything
much
should,
power.
he thinks,
That's how we met,
well,
Ben.
let's look at millennials in this way. Anyone who got their job before 2008 or 2010 got it through some level of an older school network that didn't necessarily need to utilize social media. If he tried to go on today's job market, he would not do so well. He might get the offers as a civil engineer, but it might be a lot more challenging because he stayed in one company for the last 10, 11, 12 years. He's been promoted to a senior. He might, landscape architect. He might get more opportunities now, but it would be very difficult if he got laid off today, because in today's market, it's probably not
Saturated.
going to be it is saturated. And that's not something I think he's going to understand. He thinks I spend too much time.
I'm listening, Ben. He spends too much time.
He spends too much time trying to focus and complain about how I'm doing things, which includes running my podcast. And then, he's not focusing on himself.
I see it, Ben, that you're just using your multiple skills and you're building yourself, or you're building your personal
Thank
brand and
you,
building
because
more security
somebody,
for yourself, because now you're creating another source of income and growing more talents and gifts that other employers will desire from you. I always tell my clients, I feel like no one's saying that you have to always start a business, but have a side hustle. And if you don't have a side hustle, recognize what gifts you use for your corporate employer, how you can also monetize as a freelancer. Because we live in a day and age with inflation and the cost of living, it's hard to just live on one income, right? So we should be
that's
very
the
clever
school
and
of thought that
creative.
some people still come from. But you even have, and I'm going to be really honest about something, because my mother even thinks he's an idiot for saying some of this, and she's not even able to retire. She's like, if you can find a way to make more money, separately from outside of work, doing something like this, that would be, beneficial to you as well. And
Absolutely. I could give you a
it's
perfect
funny.
example.
Yeah,
My PM contract ended in September and I was interviewing, but of course, as a career strategist, I'm really picky. I'm really intentional. And I wanted to find the right employer that I felt, like you said, Ben, finding fulfillment of where you actually belonged. And that took longer than necessary, than I anticipated, but I was able to bring income through my clients, speaking, facilitating, hosting, doing networking events, that I was able to bring income just the same to support myself comfortably until I found the perfect next PM contract I wanted to be a part of. And I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't start a business, if I didn't have a following on LinkedIn, if I didn't build my organic relationships on LinkedIn and people in the community. If I didn't find a PM work in time, how was I going to sustain myself? But because I built the personal brand strong, I had a business that was bringing in separate income and that I was able to sustain myself just comfortably. I still went on vacation. I still lived the same life I was living. And recently, I just accepted an offer with Tangible Development, being a PM for them starting on March 18th. And they were very supportive of
that's
me
cool.
of being a business owner.
Because inevitably that's the thing he's having a hard time understanding. What this
No,
basically
absolutely.
showed me is that some people, even in our generation, millennials, are completely outdated. Some are in need of, a lot of upgrades, because he's sitting there complaining how spend too much time online, you're not with enough people, and it's like, well, honestly, most people online like yourself recognize something that he doesn't want to recognize. He doesn't want to recognize that I've grown up. That's something that, when we talk about mental health, sometimes our oldest friends have this image of who we are, and they're unhappy to see what we've started to want to do later, at a certain point. Because I don't think, there was a good post last week, and it was about what people think empathy is. It was from a woman, Mita Malik, in the city. On the top, people think it's empathy. People think empathy is feeling sorry for someone. What empathy actually is being able to walk a mile in another person's shoes. So, for example, you coming from New York City, obviously, you coming from the Latin community, you can
Yep,
understand
South
where
Bronx.
some, yeah, you can understand someone like me, who also, I came from a white community, but guess what? Single parent. Where does that put me? That puts me in a situation where somebody like you has a better understanding than, as much as I love my best friend, mom and dad were present his whole life in a happy marriage. or what
Gotcha.
looked like a happy marriage. Because
I grew up with both parents, Ben. I grew up with a mother and a father in the same household. I didn't come from a single mom, but no, I understand. I have a lot of friends, and there's people I know that I grew up with and who are my network who did grow up with, with single moms, but I grew up in a two-parent.
you understand that a little more, even being in the city versus somebody who's, even though you had
From
mom and dad.
suburbia. No, absolutely.
Suburbia, unfortunately, suburbia, there's a lot of problems with that one. They don't want to sit there and realize, hey, and this came up last week because I cut up a toxic. This came up 2 weeks ago because I cut off a toxic friend like him, not like the best friend, but similar. And I had to basically say to my best friend about why that toxic friend got cut off. The real reason: you don't insult somebody's parents without understanding their situation. Like, once you cross that line, that's no longer a friendship. It's no longer a friendship when you make anti Semitic and racist comments to people
No, absolutely. And I
or
understand
about
people
people.
sometimes have questions and want to understand your perspective of why you see it this way or why you do the things you do, but it has to be done with care and in positive intent because you want to understand, not because you want to ridicule or judge. So there's a respect balance when you want to ask the tough questions because sometimes we got to be honest, we have to have the tough conversations, but you're right, Ben. It has to be done with respect. And if respect is not there, then that's not okay.
And that was the thing, because I will finish up on this. My mental health problems before work long existed before social media by living in a very affluent suburban rich community. So they can say social media is bad all they want, but like you said, and I acknowledged, and my editor and co-founder on the show out in Los Angeles, who's now married with his own kids, even did something huge over the weekend. When I brought up the bullying as a kid, he actually sat there and said, I'm sorry, one of us should have said something to this guy when we were kids. We didn't. So all I can say is, I'm sorry we didn't say something at the moment. The issue is discussing things with tolerance, but also understanding that there's a time where you just don't keep somebody around in your life anymore if they're almost always negative and they never have a
No,
nice thing.
absolutely. You are a reflection of the five people you spend the most time with. You are
I've heard
absolutely
this
right, Ben.
analogy millions of times before. I always thought it made more sense to entrepreneurs. I always thought that made more sense to entrepreneurs. And I think
No,
that, that
anyone. Remember, you want good people that can pour into you and grow you and nurture you and support you and celebrate you and champion you and guide you and mentor you and coach you the same way that you give to others. You want somebody who's loving, kind, and generous, who's honest, right? Who can also hold you accountable because they actually care about you and they want you to be your best. So, no, absolutely. If you have someone that is always negative and can't bring you value, then you have to make those tough decisions of who's allowed to be in your inner circle space.
Yeah, no, that one's understandable. So I
Mm.
think you said you wanted to stay till, what was it? Do you want to get off at 8 or 8:15? Which one?
We can do 8:15.
Okay, yeah. So my next thing is with project management. What are the different levels of it?
Well, there's different type of project managers. Here's example. There's PMs that can be a construction PM. There's PMs who are digital, meaning they just PMs that are have expertise in helping software development teams build platforms and apps. There's PMs that are considered program managers that they manage a variety of projects within a portfolio. So, there's a PM that can do just physical events if they're working at a nonprofit such as like webinars, conferences, presentations. So in a nutshell, project management can vary across the board because there's PMs that are just, who are architects and focused on engineering. So, but they all have the same principal foundations when it comes to us following the PMBOK guide of how projects have a starting and an end date and certain strategies and project management methodologies that we use to be able to accomplish the goal for the organization with the subject matter experts, which is the
Could I
team that we are given to work with.
could I
So
put a
my
podcast
goal as a
in this?
PM is, I'm sorry, my goal as a PM is that we organize the chaos.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Could a podcast like I'm doing be considered under the project management umbrella, even though there's no end date right now because it's just ongoing?
Nope. You would consider your podcast a day-to-day operation that you monitor yourself. But when it comes to project management, a project will always come to an end. If operations continues to happen, that's not considered a project. It's considered a day-to-day operation feature for an organization or product or entity. But a
So
project will always have a beginning and an end.
could I fit in an organization as a podcast producer?
If that's your choice, but a podcast producer isn't necessarily a project manager, but they may have small tasks that can overlap each other. But a PM is someone that's paid or hired or subcontracted to come in to help an organization reach a goal for a certain time period, on time, on budget, to reach those goals in unison with a smile. Sometimes
Okay.
organizations hire us because as projects get bigger with more team members, it gets more complex that you want expertise to help facilitate all those stages of the project.
Would someone like me fit under that umbrella with what I've been with kind of how I with not, or would I fit more as an operations kind of manager?
I would say operations kind of manager, but just because you're operations manager doesn't mean that knowing you work for yourself as well doesn't mean that you create different media projects that start and end at a different time. Because here's an example. We're on this podcast together. This is one of your projects. And you started this project. We had this conversation last month of what date and time that I was going to come speak with you. And then when this is over, the project you had with me and you being on this podcast has now come to an end. So
Yeah,
you're not
okay,
a
that
project
makes sense.
manager, but you're using project management principles to be able to begin and start this project of us being on this podcast, as an example. So you're using project management foundations, even though you're technically not a project manager for a company.
So if I wanted to do something with it, what would be advisable? Would I need to get a certification in it?
I would recommend getting a certification, a PMP, or the lower level one that is called CAP-M. You can also take courses on Udemy or Coursera, or Google Certificate has a project management as well. And there's so many free materials online, on YouTube, at the library. I always use free resources at the library to read all type of different project management books, and that can get you started if you have interest in moving in that industry. The project management is expected to grow a high percent all the way to 2020. Is it 2035? But I know in like 2025 they're supposed to hire like 1.4 million PMs, like across the state. A lot of organizations are realizing the benefit of hiring PMs to increase their success and save their costs when it comes to team projects. So it is a growing field. It is white male dominated, but we are seeing more people of color and more women becoming more PMs in the field. So if it's something that you're passionate about, I suggest to you is just get a couple books about project management, watch a couple videos. I recommend Joseph Phillips. He's an amazing PM instructor who's been doing this for over 20 years, and he has a lot of YouTube videos and also on Udemy to just get your feet wet and see if it excites you and interests you. If it does, it's something you can consider to move forward with. And if it's not, that's okay. You can use project management foundation principles just to be able to take your media company forward in the future if you like.
That's probably, yeah. I'm still trying to figure out on a role aspect where to go with that just for the interim. I've actually been working also with the director of student services over at Mercy University. We've been
Nice.
starting to apply. How many applications have I put in the last 2 months? I would like to say I put in maybe about up to 20 in the last 2 months total. No, it was 30 actually. Just across a couple different organizations, which were mainly colleges and universities, but I'm doing it slowly. I'm not going too fast because I have another thing that's probably going to be potentially an issue, but I'm not sure. I'm year and a half from 40, so there is some level of ageism out there. It's hidden. I can do anything if given, proper whatever, but it's still out there and it still exists.
No, absolutely. The same way racism and discrimination still exist. But it doesn't mean that we need to stop moving forward and just know the red flags, right? Because at the end of the day, no one is supposed to ask you for your age in an interview. That's nobody's business and concern. If you like the role and you're capable, apply. And when you go in the interview, you do the interview. So you're absolutely right. It does still exist in the world, but let's not use that for us to be discouraged that we still can be successful in many various things in our future. Continue to push forward.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Because age discrimination also can go the other way. Usually, when software engineers see me for the first time that I'm going to be their PM for the next 2 years, sometimes they think that I'm not old enough, right? They think that I don't have the expertise as of yet with how I look to them until I build more trust and credibility. Because remember, they can't ask me my age, right? They're making their assumptions in their mind of how
did
old
you
they
say
believe they
you're in?
think I
Did
am.
you say your early 30s? Is that what you just said to me? I might have caught that.
Yeah, I am in my early 30s, but remember, no one's allowed to ask you your age, so of course they make their assumptions of how old they think you are. And
That's
sometimes,
what we call. You know what that reminds me of? Are you familiar with the term unconscious bias?
no, absolutely. That's exactly what's happening when they see me come in the meeting and they're like, we're gonna listen to her for the next 2 years. Did she just come out of college, right? Like they have their own, and if you're someone who's leading people who are twice your age at times, right? Sometimes people have their own unconscious bias of how could you be qualified or have the expertise to do something well. And this is where you show up and show out, right? And continue to do your great work regardless, because Ben, everyone is gonna feel entitled and have their own opinion. But we shouldn't let what people think and their opinions stop us for believing in ourselves and doing our great work that we're
Yeah.
assigned to do.
And that the other funny thing that you just mentioned is this, because I've gotten those assertions too. Like, here's a couple good ones for you. Oh, you're autistic. What does that look like? Oh,
Excuse me?
I've had in my, I'll share something with you. When I was growing up, when nobody knew what autism was, and this was in the 1990s, they thought I was mentally retarded. Yes, this is from the when your comment about project management being mostly white male dominated. That was my high school in a nutshell. That that's northern Westchester. A lot of rich families, a lot of families with money. Also, 100% bigly on the ignorance train. Like if I could put them on a scale of 1 to 100, they would get the highest score, because unfortunately, to think somebody who carries an IEP that is basically just needing a few accommodations within an organization is mentally retarded basically says what a lot of, you know that there's still a very long way to go. Like, I'm I'm sure plenty of the people of color would say there needs to be more done. So do people on the spectrum. We have
Oh,
literally said
absolutely.
to
We're
people.
allies in this. We're allies in this.
I
Absolutely.
said to my best friend, even though he would like to say, well, there's been more done. I'm like, no, there isn't. There isn't enough done.
Right. We have made
Maybe you just
progress, but
don't.
there's still work that needs to be done to advocate and make accommodations and support and champion amazing people on the spectrum to be. You're absolutely right. We got more work to do.
And
We
one area I would like to see more done in is also programs for autistics to become entrepreneurs.
Oh, I
Banks making
like
it a
that.
little easier, banks making lending requirements a little easier as well. Just because if you get more autistic entrepreneurs, we can hire our own as well. Did anyone ever think of that?
I like that.
That's something that unfortunately, yeah, banks unfortunately probably, unless they're pushed to, are never going to think like that. But you can't just make you can do whatever you want with your lending requirements, but if you only allow certain types of people to be able to access that capital and you don't allow somebody like me to be able to access that capital, then how can I employ people who, are like me? They're, who aren't going to potentially get hired
You're
because
absolutely right. Women entrepreneurs out of all the capital only get 2.2%. You're preaching to the choir, right? Like, how are you going to support and grow and mentor and support us if you're not giving capital to autistic and, female business owners of color? You are absolutely right. And it's funny, Pharrell said this comment on an interview I was watching many months ago with my partner, and he said, if we focused on building our own buildings and employing our own as well, then we don't have to worry about who's in office, right? So it's about building that generational wealth that now we have decision-making power to give
except we had
opportunities
Barack
to.
Obama, and Barack Obama, unfortunately, from a policy aspect, he continued to try to do what Clinton was doing, which was cater to certain people. What he really should have done with his policies was he should have done more for, his community. He was trying
I
he was trying to appeal to more. He couldn't get a lot done within the Congress. I mean, honestly, if you really look at our Congress today, nobody can get anything done.
I think it's a really hard job to do, and I feel like this is why I try my best to focus on what is in my control and how I can continue to build generational wealth to then be able to have more decision-making power,
I haven't even been
to bring
paying
the quality
attention
of
to this
life.
I haven't even been paying attention to this year's election. I told a very close friend of mine who's similar to me in Massachusetts, don't talk to me about the election because honestly, I refuse to vote for either person running this fall. That's how bad this election is. They're not
Yep,
they're not trying to solve our generation's problem. They're not trying to help millennials. They're not trying to make things better for millennials or Gen Z.
listen, everybody is has the freedom to exercise their right to vote if they like to, and if not, that is totally their decision. I'm just focused on the work, the people, and the impact, and the world
Exactly.
will be the world.
But that's why I'm saying I haven't even been paying attention to the election because I'm doing this. Because honestly, right now, I don't want to think about the government anymore. Like I'm done trying to figure the government.
Gotcha. And I don't think it's our job to figure it out, Ben.
Nope.
We have other purpose that we're meant to focus on. Let
Yeah,
someone else
exactly.
handle it.
And that's why I can understand why a lot of people don't necessarily like to be able to discuss politics. It's not politics. It's just we're trying to make sense of policies catered toward one group of people versus the have-nots. I mean, you remember the book A Tale of Two Cities? That kind of basically where rich side of Manhattan, poor side of Manhattan. I kind of feel like that books like that, which were for generations, always end up so relevant today. So thank you for
Oh,
coming
absolutely.
by. So thank you for coming by today. This was a lot of fun,
No
and
problem, Ben. Thank you
we'll
for
remain in
having me.
contact. This fall, I'm going to be doing at least three panel discussions. I'll keep you updated on those, and you'll get an invite to those. Okay.
Thank you so much, Ben. Have a good
All right.
night.
You
And
too.
remember, we'll chat offline. Send me that resume.
Yes,
I'm
I'll
happy
send
and
it.
willing.
I'll send it at some point this week, latest by the weekend. Okay.
Okay, sounds good. I want to help you
All right.
find that new dream job.
Yep. Thank you.
No problem, Ben.
All right. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Bye.